Say good morning.
No.
Say good morning.
No.
Why not?
No.
That's not nice.
No.
What would you do if the person who almost killed you was released from jail, only to come back and finish the job? Imagine being a mother just days out of jail, only to face the very person who put you there and knowing you might not survive. This isn't a fictional story. This is the real-life tragedy of Kadesha Aundrea Burch, whose life was cut short by someone she knew all too well. Just 96 hours after her release, the unthinkable happened. How could this happen? How could the system fail so miserably? Stick around to uncover the chilling details of Kadesha's final days and the shocking twists in this case. Kadesha Aundrea Burch was born on December 23, 1993, in Harrodsburg, Kentucky. A quiet town in central Kentucky, Harrodsburg's charm hides the struggles of many who call it home. Kadesha's life, though marked by hardship, was shaped by the love she had for her family, especially her two young children. Little is known about her upbringing, but what matters most is how she carried the weight of being a mother in a world that seemed to close in around her. From a young age, she felt the strain of a challenging environment. Despite the obstacles she faced, Cadesha did her best to protect and care for her kids. She was 31 when her life was tragically cut short, and though details of her childhood are scarce, her role as a mother was clear. Her identity was wrapped in the love she gave her children, and every choice she made, good or bad, revolved around securing their future. Her story, however, is one of resilience in the face of adversity, at least until the tragic events that unfolded in late December 2024. Kadesha's death didn't just impact her, it shattered her children's world. A mother's presence is irreplaceable, and when she is taken so suddenly, the void left behind is enormous. Her two children, who were just learning what the world had to offer, now face the harsh reality of growing up without the one person who cared for them unconditionally. They'll never get to hear her laughter, or feel the comfort of her embrace again. Her children will have to carry the pain of this loss for the rest of their lives, with only memories to hold on to. Kadesha's tragic death has set into motion an emotional toll that no one can quantify. As the shock of her passing reverberated through her family, questions about their safety, their future, and their well-being began to surface. How would they cope with the absence of a mother who, despite her struggles, was their anchor? The pain her children will endure cannot be measured by words, but it will shape their journey forward in ways that are unimaginable to those who haven't experienced similar loss. Imagine growing up without your mother. What would that do to you? Losing a mother is a grief that no child should face. The sense of abandonment, the loneliness, the constant longing, these emotions are not easy to overcome. For Kadesha's children, they now have to learn how to live in a world without her, facing daily reminders of a love once given freely. The absence of that love leaves a mark that time cannot heal. As viewers, we are forced to confront the reality of how fragile life can be. Family isn't just about shared moments. It's about the support and love that are given without condition. Kadesha's children will forever carry the emotional weight of losing their mother at such a young age. They are now part of a tragic statistic, children left behind by senseless violence, left to navigate a world that feels colder without their protector. Her story invites us all to reflect on the importance of family, the bonds that tie us together, and how easily those bonds can be broken by violence. What would we do if we lost a loved one to something preventable? Would we take action to change the systems that failed them? Kadesha Aundrea Burch's relationship with Roosevelt Davis III was far from ordinary. At first glance, it might have seemed like a relationship that would withstand the trials of life, but appearances were deceiving. What lay beneath the surface was a cycle of violence, manipulation, and escalating tension. Roosevelt, a man who had reportedly come from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was a figure in Kadesha's life who brought nothing but pain. The two had an on and off relationship, one that seemed defined more by conflict than love. In October 2024, their relationship reached a breaking point. During a domestic altercation in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, Roosevelt allegedly strangled Cadesha. In the heat of that confrontation, Kadesha acted in self-defense, firing a gun and striking him. The incident was both shocking and indicative of how far their relationship had deteriorated. Kadesha's actions were an attempt to protect herself from further harm. She had reached a point where it seemed as though there was no way out, except through violence. That October incident led to Kadesha's arrest and subsequent jail time for attempted murder and wanton endangerment. But while Kadesha faced charges, Roosevelt walked away with only minor injuries. The justice system in this instance seemed to turn a blind eye to the reality of what had occurred. In the aftermath, Kadesha was left with a deep scar, both emotionally and physically, and a sense of betrayal by the very system that was supposed to protect her. Kadesha's relationship with Roosevelt was marked by a disturbing pattern of abuse. It was not just the physical confrontation in October 2024. There were numerous instances of control and emotional manipulation. Like many victims of domestic violence, Kadesha likely felt trapped in a cycle that she couldn't escape. Roosevelt's actions were a constant reminder that control, power, and fear were central to their dynamic. The emotional abuse she endured was just as damaging as the physical violence. Kadesha likely felt isolated, as many victims do, isolated from family, friends, and any form of support. The fear of retaliation from Roosevelt kept her in the relationship longer than she should have stayed. Abusive relationships often work in cycles: tension, violence, reconciliation, and calm. Each time the calm would settle in, it only created a false sense of peace. Domestic violence doesn't just leave bruises on the body, it scars the mind and spirit. Kadesha, like so many victims, may have believed that things could get better, that Roosevelt would change, that love could heal the wounds. But that wasn't the reality of their relationship. The tragic irony is that the system, instead of intervening in a meaningful way, allowed the situation to continue unchecked. There were opportunities for someone to step in and help Kadesha before it was too late, but no one did. How many people have to suffer in silence before action is taken? When does a toxic relationship turn into something more dangerous? These are questions that many victims of domestic violence ask, but often, no one listens until it's too late. The tragic reality is that in many cases the system fails to intervene until someone's life is lost. In Kadesha's case, she faced not only the direct violence from Roosevelt, but also the weight of a system that couldn't protect her. How many times does someone have to ask for help before they get it? How many victims have to silently endure before real change happens? Domestic violence is not just about physical wounds. It's about control, fear, and manipulation. It's about a power imbalance that keeps someone trapped. Kadesha's situation was not an isolated incident. Many victims of domestic violence are left without a voice, and the longer this continues, the higher the risk of escalation. But the story doesn't end there. The violent history between Kadesha and Roosevelt didn't simply fade away after her arrest. The consequences of this toxic relationship would only escalate, culminating in a tragedy that could have been prevented. We'll dive deeper into what happened after her release and how the system failed to protect Kadesha from her abuser. Stay with us as we uncover the dark turn of events that led to Kadesha's untimely death, just days after she was free. On the evening of December 27, 2024, the unthinkable happened. Just days after her release from jail, Kadesha Aundrea Burch was confronted by Roosevelt Davis III in a horrifying act of violence. Kadesha had returned home to Springfield, Kentucky, hoping to find peace after her tumultuous time behind bars. But her past would not let her go. Roosevelt, fueled by anger and a clear intent to harm, forced his way into her home. Kadesha, who had already been through so much, was once again faced with the person who had caused her so much pain. Without warning, Roosevelt opened fire, shooting at Kadesha multiple times. The sound of gunshots shattered the evening's quiet, forever changing the lives of everyone involved. This wasn't just a random act of violence. It was the continuation of a toxic relationship that had already escalated to deadly levels. Kadesha had no time to react, no chance to escape. In an instant, her life was taken, and the lives of those who cared about her would never be the same. Alongside Kadesha during the attack was Frances Campbell, a 52-year-old woman who was injured in the shooting. Frances was not just a bystander. She was someone close to Kadesha, a friend who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The tragedy was not only Kadesha's, it also became Frances's nightmare. As Roosevelt fired his weapon, Frances was struck, caught in the crossfire. She wasn't just a friend to Kadesha, she was also a victim in this senseless act of violence. Frances, like Kadesha, would have to live with the emotional and physical scars of that night. The tragedy was far-reaching, and it highlighted just how far the consequences of this domestic violence extended. Frances's injury was a painful reminder that the danger was real for anyone around Cadesha. Whether they were directly involved in the conflict or not, the crime scene was chaotic, marked by the aftermath of a violent attack that no one had seen coming. Kadesha's home, which should have been a place of safety, was now a crime scene. Blood stained the floors, and the air was thick with fear and confusion. As police arrived, the quiet neighborhood was disrupted by sirens and flashing lights, a grim reminder that violence could strike anywhere, even in the most peaceful places. The house was not large, but the impact of the event seemed to stretch beyond its walls. Kadesha lay there, lifeless, a mother who had hoped for a fresh start. The violent interruption of her life was not only a personal tragedy, but also a stark illustration of how domestic abuse can escalate into irreversible harm. Have you ever felt that someone was following you or lurking just outside your door? Imagine the fear of knowing it could be your last moment. For those who have never been through a situation like this, it is impossible to understand the terror Kadesha must have felt in her final moments. The dread of knowing that a dangerous person was close by, perhaps even closer than expected, is a fear no one should ever have to experience. Kadesha's death serves as a sobering reminder of the very real risks that victims of domestic violence face, even after they think they have escaped their abuser. The sense of safety we often take for granted was ripped away from Kadesha in an instant, and no one could have predicted that her release from jail would lead to this tragic end. Kadesha was a mother, a daughter, a sister. She didn't deserve this. But what could have been done to prevent it? Kadesha's death wasn't inevitable. There were warnings, there were signs of the danger she was in, but the system failed to protect her in time. This wasn't just a tragic event. It was a preventable one. If the right measures had been taken, if there had been more support for Kadesha, maybe she would still be alive today. Her death is a wake-up call for all of us, a reminder that we must do more to protect those caught in the cycle of abuse. Following Kadesha Aundrea Burch's death, the investigation quickly escalated into a manhunt. As law enforcement scrambled to piece together the details of the shooting, a clear picture emerged. Kadesha's killer, Roosevelt Davis III, didn't waste time disappearing into the night, but authorities were not far behind. The pursuit of Davis was intense. A high-speed chase ensued as police attempted to apprehend him. The scene was chaotic, police vehicles weaving in and out of traffic, sirens blaring, and Davis trying to outrun the law that was closing in on him. The chase reached its peak when Davis was finally caught in Shelby County, Kentucky. When he was apprehended, the authorities discovered something chilling. Davis had already taken extreme measures to ensure he had the resources necessary for the attack. His actions had been premeditated. The police quickly realized that he had planned this violence carefully, but they would soon uncover even more disturbing facts about his motives. The question on everyone's mind was, why? Why would Davis take such drastic action? The answer lay in his actions leading up to the attack. It was revealed that Roosevelt Davis had robbed a bank in Wisconsin prior to traveling to Kentucky. He wasn't simply trying to get by. He was making sure he had the money to purchase firearms. Davis's motive was clear. He wanted to kill Cadesha and anyone else who got in his way. He planned to use the money from the robbery to buy the weapons that would allow him to carry out his violent intentions. The bank robbery was not a random act of desperation. It was a calculated step in his plan to carry out a cold, ruthless murder. This was not just about revenge over a failed relationship. It went much deeper. Roosevelt Davis had gone to extreme lengths to prepare for what he felt was a necessary act. His belief that he had been wronged by Kadesha seemed to fuel his resolve. In his mind, Kadesha had to pay for leaving him, for standing up to him, and for what he perceived as betrayal. The chilling twist in the story, however, was that Davis didn't only plan to kill Kadesha. His plan included Frances Campbell as well. It was clear that Davis had no regard for human life. Frances, a 52-year-old woman who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, became an unintended target. She wasn't just collateral damage, she was a victim caught in the crossfire of Davis's rage and carefully laid plans. The idea that Davis had planned to kill both Kadesha and Frances suggests that his motive went beyond mere revenge or anger over a failed relationship. This was a man who had made a deliberate decision to end lives, regardless of the consequences. He wanted to destroy what was left of Kadesha's world, and anyone who got in his way became expendable. It wasn't just about the failed relationship. It was about control, power, and a deep-seated need for retribution. Davis's twisted view of the world led him to believe that violence was the only solution to his perceived wrongs. What would drive someone to take such extreme measures, to rob a bank and kill someone over a failed relationship? What does this say about our society? Roosevelt Davis's actions highlight a disturbing reality about how some people view violence as an acceptable answer to their problems. This isn't just about one individual, it's about a broader issue that many communities face: the ability to address toxic relationships and prevent them from escalating into something deadly. Davis's decision to commit such a violent act points to deeper issues within his mindset and possibly society as a whole. Why didn't the system intervene sooner? Why were the warning signs ignored? What does it say when a person believes their only option for resolving conflict is through violence? What would you have done if you knew this was the person targeting you? When we hear stories like Kadesha's, we often ask ourselves what we would do in a similar situation. Would we have been able to escape before it was too late? Would we have known how to protect ourselves from someone who would go to such lengths? It's a terrifying thought, but one that many people in abusive relationships face every day. Could the outcome have been different if Kadesha had been given more support, or if someone had intervened sooner? Roosevelt Davis III was quickly apprehended after his violent attack on Kadesha Aundrea Burch, and it didn't take long for the charges against him to mount. He was officially charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and first-degree burglary. These charges reflected the gravity of his actions. He had entered Kadesha's home uninvited, with the intent to harm, and succeeded in killing her. The charges of attempted murder stemmed from his actions against Frances Campbell, the 52-year-old woman who was injured during the shooting. In addition to the charges directly related to the shooting, Davis faced other serious offenses. The investigation revealed that he had robbed a bank in Wisconsin to fund his firearms purchases, which added an extra layer of criminality to his actions. His premeditated actions showed that this was not a spontaneous crime. It was part of a larger, calculated plan to end Kadesha's life and anyone else he deemed a threat. As the trial moved forward, the case became a symbol of the larger issues within the justice system. How could someone with such a clear history of violence be allowed to roam free? Why wasn't more done to prevent a man like Davis from getting the means to carry out his deadly intentions? These questions would linger throughout the legal process, and they were at the heart of the public outcry that followed. The public response to Kadesha's death was swift and powerful. People across the country expressed their shock and sorrow over the tragic loss of a mother, a daughter, and a sister. Social media platforms became a space for tributes to Kadesha, with people sharing their condolences and calling for justice. The online community rallied behind Kadesha's memory, posting about the dangers of domestic violence and urging lawmakers to take stronger action. But beyond the grief, there was a sense of outrage. Kadesha's death wasn't just another crime statistic. It was the direct result of a broken system that failed to protect her. Many felt that the justice system had let her down, allowing her to be released from jail only to face a brutal death at the hands of her abuser. The public's anger wasn't only directed at Davis, it was also focused on the system that allowed someone like him to slip through the cracks. Her story became a powerful reminder of the need for change. People began asking why the justice system couldn't do more to intervene in situations like Kadesha's. Tributes and online campaigns centered around the need for stronger protections for victims of domestic violence, pushing for laws that would offer more immediate intervention and support. How many times have we seen the justice system fail victims? What if more had been done sooner? These questions reflect the frustration and helplessness felt by many when the justice system does not intervene in time. Kadesha's death, though heartbreaking, is not an isolated incident. Every day, victims of domestic violence are left without the protection they need, and often it's only after something tragic occurs that the system reacts. What if Kadesha had been given more support when she first tried to break free from Roosevelt? What if there had been a more effective system in place to monitor abusers and prevent them from taking matters into their own hands? These are the questions we need to answer as a society, because Kadesha's story is just one of many, where the justice system failed to protect the victim before it was too late. Kadesha's death is a tragic reminder of how much more needs to be done to protect those at risk of domestic violence. The public's response to her story has sparked a wider conversation about the role of the legal system in safeguarding vulnerable individuals. What could be done to improve the system? How can we ensure that victims of domestic violence receive the protection and support they need before it's too late? This is a call to action, not just for lawmakers, but for all of us. We need to question how our system handles cases of domestic violence and demand more from the institutions that are supposed to protect us. We must push for stronger laws, better resources for victims, and more comprehensive support systems to prevent tragedies like Kadesha's. The tragic death of Kadesha Aundrea Burch is not just a personal loss. It is a stark reminder of the broader issues surrounding domestic violence and the need for a more effective response. Kadesha's story is one that many victims of abuse can relate to, and it brings to light the dangerous cycle that often exists in abusive relationships. One of the most important lessons from this case is the urgent need for increased awareness about domestic violence. While public knowledge has improved over the years, many still fail to recognize the signs of an abusive relationship. Or worse, they underestimate how quickly a situation can escalate. Kadesha's case illustrates just how dangerous it can be for a victim who is trying to escape. The fact that Kadesha was released from jail, only to be killed just days later, shows how fragile the protections for victims truly are. More comprehensive protective measures must be in place. Legal protections for victims of domestic violence need to be enforced more rigorously, and we must have systems in place to monitor and intervene before it's too late. When an abuser is released back into society, it should not be without a thorough assessment of the potential risks they pose to their victims. Additionally, the support systems for those trying to leave an abusive relationship, whether it's shelter, counseling, or legal aid, must be accessible and reliable. Though her life was tragically cut short, Kadesha's story has the potential to spark change. She was a mother who loved her children deeply, and her death highlights the need to protect not only victims, but their families as well. Kadesha's role as a mother is central to her legacy. Her children are left behind to face the world without their mother, and they will grow up with the scars of this loss. Her death should not be in vain. Kadesha's story has the power to shine a light on the flaws in our system and encourage a greater focus on preventing domestic violence. The tragedy that befell her family is one that could have been prevented with more awareness, better intervention, and more reliable support systems. If her case serves as a catalyst for change, then something positive can come from this heartbreaking event. Kadesha's legacy is a call to action. It's a reminder that every victim of domestic violence deserves to live in safety, and that no one should have to face their abuser without the support of a protective system. Her children deserve to know that their mother's story led to real change, that her death wasn't just another statistic, but a turning point in how we approach domestic violence. How can we make sure no more lives are lost in situations like this? What steps can we take to ensure justice is served in time? These questions are at the heart of the conversation that Kadesha's death forces us to have. It's not enough to simply mourn the loss of a life. There must be a commitment to action. We cannot afford to ignore the warning signs or to dismiss the urgency of preventing domestic violence. The time for change is now. What can we do as individuals and as a society to ensure that more victims like Kadesha don't face the same tragic fate? It starts with recognizing the signs, supporting those in need, and demanding that the justice system does more to protect the vulnerable. Whether it's stronger laws, better access to resources, or more public education, we must work together to create a safer world for everyone, especially those who are most at risk. Kadesha's death calls us to reflect on how we, as a society, handle domestic violence. How can we better protect victims? What more can be done to prevent a tragedy like this from happening again? I want to hear your thoughts. Share your ideas on how society can better address domestic violence situations. What steps do you think need to be taken to ensure justice is served and that no more lives are lost due to abuse? Leave a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. The tragic story of Kadesha Aundrea Burch serves as a painful reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the failures of a system that too often allows abusers to continue their harmful actions. Kadesha's life was cut short by the very person who had already shown a clear intent to harm her. The justice system's inability to intervene in time allowed a violent relationship to spiral into a senseless act of murder. Her death, and the failure to protect her, highlights the urgent need for reform in how we address domestic violence. Kadesha's story isn't just about one individual. It's about the countless victims who face similar struggles and never get the chance to escape. The signs were there, but the system wasn't equipped to handle the escalating danger. This case is a powerful reminder that we must do more to protect those at risk, and we must act before it's too late. Domestic violence doesn't just affect the victim. It tears apart families, leaving long-lasting emotional scars. Kadesha's children now face a future without their mother, and her family must grapple with the trauma of losing someone they loved. The impact of this tragedy extends far beyond that one night. It will ripple through the lives of those who knew and loved Kadesha for years to come. The sad reality is that Kadesha's death is just one example of how domestic violence can destroy lives. But it's also a call to action for all of us. We must demand better protections, more support for victims, and stronger laws to prevent these tragedies from happening again. What other true crime cases highlight systemic flaws in justice? Stay tuned for more stories that shed light on the dark side of society, where justice often fails to protect the innocent. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Records for more shocking stories that will make you think about the systems around us. If you were moved by Kadesha's story, share your thoughts with us. What do you think could have been done differently to protect her? Like, share, and comment below to join the conversation. Let's work together to raise awareness and fight for change.